I'm Brittany. This is Mo Run, and welcome to the Erha Book Chat. I put a poll in the field asking, people to theorize why I was late, and it was a dead tie between losing the hat and fighting with audio, right until the last second, where someone slipped in and tipped it to lost the hat. And I must say, the audios have it. Audio wins. You try to be like a good stream host, and so you say, I'll take some time today to tweak the audio settings and tangle with the beast of audio that you really hate dealing with, because there's a couple of audio things that have been bugging you for a while and you should fix them for today's stream. You absolutely should. The problem is that audio bullshit is a Jenga tower, and if you don't move the right thing at the right time in the right way with the right knowledge, everything just interacts with everything else, and suddenly you're oscillating between two different problems, and solving one means the solution to the other one goes away, and vice versa, until you find this completely inexplicable balance that you're just kind of supposed to know. But I did get the chief problem out of the way, so I should no longer be grating your ears when I scream. That should be a clear sound now. Anyway, we have more important things to talk about. Oh, yes, and also you may have to turn the audio up a little bit, because I had to turn things down. So I can fix that between this stream and the next, but you guys are the guinea pigs. So I was going to see if it particularly affected you guys so that I would know to fix it for the future. Because I had to turn something down a little bit, and listen. Yeah, it's quiet, so I'll remember to scream and maybe get a little bit closer to the mic than I usually do. We are talking about Erha Volume 10 today, and among other things, I'm also out of my usual notebook. I've used them up, and I apparently need to order more. So we just have a regular notepad today with which I have things to bring up in regards to chapter 311. The grand finale, which was indeed the grand finale. Although apparently there's a chapter 312 that was technically the first bonus chapter, but is actually an epilogue. And I'm like, how do you have more epilogue vibes than what I just read? Because chapter 311 was the biggest epilogue vibe you ever heard of. And I'm wondering what else she has to tell me in an epilogue type fashion. Because she seemed to, get that out of the way with chapter 311. So that's the big question that's one of the big questions that I have. What the heck is there more to say in an epilogue way? But then I have other things to bring up in the 40-page onslaught of emotion, this time positive for a change. That was the grand finale. There were a lot of even small payoffs, which, this is Meat Bun, we expect that. And it was to such a degree that it almost felt like every other line was some sort of payoff or conclusion or important bit of information that calls on all this previous information. And I'm going to ask you guys what your favorite little detail is, because I got to tell you, mine was the automatons. There were a lot of really brutal and emotional details, but the one that leapt out at me were the automatons being on sale, because it reminded me of this one character's epilogue from Critical Role. And it was an instance of a character who is not a born fighter, was not really supposed to be a fighter, but was more like artisan, was finally able to put down all of the fighting and the bloodshed and return to his original vocation. So the soldier got to stop pretending to be a soldier and go and be an artist. And I feel like that's exactly the point that Meatbun was making with Chuaning. I mean, like, he can just make automatons again. He can just make them. Because he's not running around trying to save the world or more run or anything like that. And that made that, and that's how the epilogue starts. That's how 311 starts. It's literally on the first page. We're seeing those automatons. And yeah, Maria says he's still helping people. Exactly. He now just gets to make the things that he likes making that will then help people. That's what she opened with. Because even when she's being nice to you, she has to be sick and twisted about it. Liv said her favorite detail was Shuemong adopting a kid like his dad did. Yeah. Shuemong in general is a payoff in about like 20 different ways. And to the point where, you know, adopting a kid like his dad, I don't think is even the biggest one, which is fucking insane. And that would be one of my favorites about Shuemong as well. That, like, he got to become a Shizun after, like, loving and treasuring, like, his Shizun. And then it also, you know, leapfrogs over to Chuaning, who got to be a Shizun and pass that down. And Shuemong got to literally pick up the torch and carry it on in that way that his other two disciples couldn't, wouldn't, didn't. It's like, after all of his tutelage, there's the student that goes on to become another teacher. And that's so fucking emotional. So, since we're on the topic of Shuemong, I could have sworn there was another. Oh yeah, I do have a couple of more Shuemong notes. One actually piggybacks off of what Liv just said. They told Shuemong about Taishanjun, and Shuemong still wanted to see them. Yeah. Which sits right next to Shuemong still wanting to see them, despite finding out that they were in big gay love with each other, which was socially inappropriate for a couple of big reasons. Like, what a lovely sign of growth. The growth in Shuemong is crazy. And goes back to what somebody said, I think in a previous book chat. Hell, it may have been Liv, who said that Shuemong was like the traditional protagonist. It was Heather. Heather, I think, made that comment about Shuemong being the more traditional, like, story protagonist and kind of filling that role in a lot of ways. And the amount of growth in him, classic, like, hero's journey protagonist to that nth degree. Oh, I was right. It was Heather. Thank you, Liv. oh God, one of those moments where you have a thought and then it absolutely leaves you. But yes, he still wants to see them, even with the gay of it all, even with the Taeshanjun of it all. And he gets to. There have been a good number of fics that I've read that particularly do this thing well, where in the epilogue type of situation, they are able to float a possibility or a new reality or something like that that feels very like bittersweet and sad, and make it feel like that's just the way it is, only to come back later in the epilogue and be like, actually, that wasn't the ending of that. The ending of that is this. This works better with examples. Shui Meng follows into this like perfectly. He sees them. He wants so badly to actually like speak to them, and they want to see him too. And we get this like paragraph about how that's just like simply not possible, and they're, distant and they're just apart, and how could they possibly? And you're like, wow, that's going to be how it is. And then she comes back fucking later and she's like, oh, actually, they see each other once a year, which isn't enough, but it is so much better than nothing. Like, it really takes the edge off in a big way. To say nothing of the fact that he's sect leader. Seeshung Peak is brought back, and they are now like one of the foremost and eventually the foremost on the peak, which just contributes to the overall happy ending of, the good guys win, and much better change is made and strides are taken. And all you have to do to communicate that, not that she just did this, but all you have to do to communicate that is be like, Shui Meng, Seeshung Peak, sect leader. That then goes on to be one of the foremost. That's how we know. When talking about them actually being able to reunite once a year, Maddie said Meat Bun had to get one last zinger in. Yes, she had to make you a little bit sad and worry one more time before she came out. She was like, okay, actually, they at least get to see each other. I do wonder if at any point in their lifetimes, if they happen across Shimei, that would be an interesting bonus story, I feel. I would be really curious to see that happen somewhere down the line, not even necessarily in the first few years, like somewhere they come across this well-known charity healer. Which, by the way, fuck off, Meat Bun. There was a perfect ending for everyone, including the better water bitch. And actually, somebody sent me an ask the other day that was like, or yesterday, so it may not have gone up yet because I put everything in the queue. But I got an ask the other day that brought up how I had talked about Chuaning's influence on our Shimei, making him a better, more empathic person, and getting that love and care from Chuaning really impacted him, and brought up how, in their opinion, Mo Run's example of redemption in general, but especially despite the flower, when, Shimei knew about the flower and all of that, like, impacted him more. And I would say there's several factors contributing to why Shimei wound up the way he did. But I think like the balance is that Chuaning and his teaching led Shimei to be to have a bit more empathy, to have a bit more care. But then Mo Run's example is what led Shimei to become a non-profit healer. And he's just drifting around at doing good as a sinner because of Mo Run's redemption arc. And I would even go so far as to say that it was witnessing Mo Run's redemption that honestly probably kept Shimei from ending himself over guilt and shame. It's the double influence of Chuaning and Mo Run that is like, oddly enough, if you wanted to point to a character that would be the closest to like the one that they parented, even though it was inadvertent for the most part, you could convince me that that character would be Shimei. Ooh, and yeah, Liv says, Liv quotes the "Why don't I get to start again?" and says, "Well, here's the thing, you can." Exactly. Fucking exactly. Really delivering on the not just the redemption, but the healing after something so intensely dark. As I'm about to sneeze. Maybe not. She delivers on that in every single beautiful way that I was wanting. We so deeply needed that. And she really had the characters able to reach for joy and warmth and happiness and better, despite the absolute fucking shit that she put them through. And it very much reminded me of the classic Samwise quote from Lord of the Rings, is that, you know, sometimes it's just, it feels like it's too much. There's just too much bad and just too much has happened, and there's just too much evil, dark shit, awfulness, that it could never possibly be good again. It feels like that's permanently out of reach. But then it is. That's exactly what she was able to pull off there. And I really appreciate it. She really did. Oh, I moved on from Shui Meng a little bit too quickly. So, what possible reason could there have been for the stepbrother thing than to put Shui Meng's queerness on display for like 2 solid pages? There's no other explanation for this. That section is actually why I am daring to hope for Shui Meng to get railed by one or both Han Shuis in a bonus story, because of that couple of pages. Literally out of fucking nowhere. And all he can do is look at the most beautiful man he's ever seen. What? What was that? What in homosexuality was that? It's simply... Oh. Henry says, I thought she wouldn't even give us a threesome. Yeah, on one hand, she is up for, it kind of seems, most things. But on the other hand, I just can't be sure. But boy, You don't give me 2 pages of Shuemeng, like, being speechless over a man's beauty without, like, come on. How does that not, like, I guess she could have been like, oh, by the way, in case you were doubting me, Shuemeng is flamingly queer, but then that's it? And she was just going to leave it at that? And then there would be no, I can technically see how she could do that, which is why I'm not 100% certain that Shuemeng's going to be railed in the manner in which he deserves. But I'm hopeful, is the thing. I think it's possible. Ooh, Liv says it plays to both of his insecurities, being replaced and being closeted. You are fucking right. And it also fed into his, the double-sided coin of narcissism and insecurity. He doesn't want to be replaced. He is hopelessly closeted, and he still has that, like, but I'm the prettiest, right? Like, no one can be prettier than me. Which was a lovely little touch of realism, actually, considering all the other ways in which he grew. He still has that little... But yes, I could not let this chat pass without bringing up the nuclear warhead of sexuality that dropped on Shuemeng. Is there anything else to bring up that isn't going to make me, like, chew glass? No. All right. So, there are so many ways in which funneling it down to the point of we should not judge others too rashly, too quickly. Judging others too rashly is literally part of the quote. There are so many ways in which this narrative speaks to that. And off the top of your head, what are some of the ways you think of? She embodied this in characters and both in how she told this story. Because she had me suspicious of the water bitch, and then she had me fucking furious at the water bitch, and then as it turned out, OG water bitch, just as fucking goddamn bitchy as you imagined. OG timeline Shimei, though, a little bit more complicated, a little bit more nuanced. Don't judge people too rashly. To say nothing of Mo Run as a whole ass character. Taishan Jun as well. Like, she built that in so fucking hard that, of course, she can just funnel it down to, hey, maybe we don't judge other people for no fucking reason or just off the cuff. At a glance. She really illustrated her point over the course of 10 volumes and several characters and multiple plot lines. Ooh, Henry says Chuaning's purity and people putting him on a pedestal. It made people much more cruel once they found out the truth. Yeah. And that even had, the effect of Chuaning had a thing with his own purity. That was a whole internalized issue that he had to break down over the course of a couple of volumes and getting ravished in certain ways. Oh yeah, Henry also brings up that Henry also says, didn't so many people die because they didn't believe Mo Run? Yeah, that too. There's so many murder boards that you can have about Erha with all the red string, and I think one of them could just be dedicated to the how she baked in judging others too quickly and all the ramifications of that. Beautiful. I always love it when an author can not just tie everything back to a simple thematic point after exploring it all to the nth degree, but then when they also find a way to make the reader themselves confront that by nature of the story, that is what that's what separates, what's the word I want to use, that's what separates an expert from a master. That is a master storytelling technique, to somehow weave together all of that just in the story, but also in a way that inherently, in one way or another, makes the reader confront that. Because who, over the course of this entire story, wasn't wrong about a character at some point? Didn't judge a character and then turned out to be wrong about it? It's impossible. She's sick. She's sick and twisted. Truly diabolical. Yuangshi healing from grief as much as one heals from grief by giving the last bit of Nangongsa to, listen, I can't even really describe it or else I'm going to get emotional. What's particularly fucking, again, sick and twisted about it is that we get that beautiful fucking moment before she then springs off of that, before Meatba, and then springs off of that to make a significant part of the impact of 311 be about carrying people with you and grief and healing from grief specifically and healing from such huge, tremendous loss, and about how everyone stays with you and all of that. It was like one last fucking springboard that you didn't know was a springboard until you're already splatted against the wall. So she gave us all the fucking emotion, but still used it narratively as a setup for later. I hate her. Argon sums it up nicely. Let's not talk about it. I will die. Girl, same. Henry says mean bun. Yes. A classic example of mean bun. Ninin says those lines of Shui Meng reflecting about all the people lost makes me cry every time. Uh-huh. 10 volumes of absolutely glorious prose, and she really put every fucking ounce into that goddamn epilogue, into every moment. She pulled out all of the stops. Every single fucking one. To give a chapter 311 that she knows the reader deserves. And being able to so beautifully fucking render that Shui Meng reflection. Ooh. Liv has... What's that about? Yeah? Should we or should we not talk about this? I was going to say Liv beat me to the punch by about half a second. Yeah. You did. Yes. The Taishun Jun of it all. Obviously, the most diabolical choice. To just be like BT Doves. he still gets to hang around every 3 days. And we didn't necessarily get a we didn't get a lot of details over exactly how Taeshun Junhee was. However, given that the flower's no longer an issue, Mo Run just gets to turn into entitled little shit every 3 days, who probably more aggressively than when Mo Run is around. That was about the extent of it that I got. Because obviously there's no reason to think or believe that it's just old school Taeshun Jin. Like, none whatsoever. Although I've heard that back when there was only a fan translation into English, the nuance of certain Taeshun Jun elements didn't make it to English readers. And I can understand that. But I love that, given a glorious translation, but still, I love that she was like, you can have your Taeshun Jun. Taeshun Jun deserves to have an ending as well and sit around and be loved by Chuaning as well. Of course. We are coming up on time where we have to hop on over to the stream. But Henry asked, if we're finishing the volume this stream. I don't think so. And then if we are, then yeah, there won't be streams until volume 11 comes out, and actually, like, technically the week after volume 11 comes out would be when I start the streams for volume 11, just so that I can make sure and I don't have to stress about the fact that a copy will reach me in time for streams. But it shouldn't be today. I thought it was Monday. Or not Monday. I thought it would be on Tuesday when we would be finishing the volume. But Taeshun Jun is a great example of the way that Meat Bun gives you everything in a way that is so narratively justified that it doesn't feel like pandering or just trying to it doesn't feel nearly, if at all, as self-indulgent as it would in a lesser writer's hands. Because you can't, it's literally what I just said, you can't argue that Taeshun Jun doesn't deserve a life of being loved by Chuaning. And we have seen that over time, he will heal in his own way. Certain things might stay the same, or at least similar, but... And so that was just such a... She's so... diabolical is the word of the day around the internet, but like truly diabolical in every sense was giving us and giving Chuaning a little Taeshun Jun. Not to mention, it only makes the stuff we got with Chuaning and Taeshun Jun volume 8, 7, with essentially like Wushan Palace Redux and all of that. It was one of those sequences where we saw Taeshun Jun sort of healing a bit and like changing a little bit. That just makes it all fucking even more worthwhile. That was already narratively justified, but then when you're heading towards an ending of Chuaning living peacefully with both sides of Mo Run, of course, you just can't argue with it, man. She really, really covers her tracks. Where even if I disagreed with a creative decision she made, that would be purely personal and subjective. You can't really knock anything down that she did. She's too good at architecture. Damn it. She'll be studied by me. Yes, Henry, he gradually became more lucid and he deserved peace. None of his cruel actions were truly his own. So then by the end, we're all so happy and relieved that Tae-Shun-jun still gets to be around. Which is such a 180 that it feels like I want to say 360, but that's technically a bad metaphor because that suggests that you wind up in the same place instead of in the complete opposite one. But it's so impactful that I want to say it's a 360 from where we were, but it's not. It's a 180. It's total 180. And over the course of 2 years of having read all this, like, thinking back to the original Tae-Shun-jun impression and experiences and actions that we get to chapter 311, like, what? It feels like two completely different people. Or at least I have two completely different sets of feelings about it, which is silly because they're the same fucking character. I'm telling you, man, the reread is gonna go so crazy. I'm actually concerned. I'm also late. I'm a little late to the reading stream now. And so we're going to hop on over there. Argon says, you could call it a 540. Thank you, Argon. You could call it a yes, 540 fucking degrees is the feelings about Tae-Shun-jun. Thank you so much for that, Argon. I'm going to hop on over to the reading stream. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. Fingers crossed that everyone gets railed in these bonus stories as I spill things on myself. So I'm going to go take care of that and hop on over to the reading stream. I will see you over there. See you in a second.